All right.
So-
So page 6.
Page 1, town attire, the town court. First, we have the town court HVAC replacement and roof repairs at $370,000. I think as everybody's aware at this point, we had the chiller go down in the court, and we had to set up a temporary generator and AC system to cool the court
Big difference.
over the summer period. This is for that replacement and the roof that is basically destroyed or,
So when would the work be done?
it has to get done this,
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a 5-month lead time, so as soon as we get that, we're out of the box with it.
Okay, so like when would you say the target date for finishing this would be?
Well, they can't order the unit until we provide them with the funding.
Okay, so
So
let's say we approve the budget in April, you know.
5 months for the
So
unit.
then how long will it take you? So let's say we approve the budget, I'm just throwing out, say, April, let's say,
That's
the
September.
first meeting, say, in April. I'm just throwing out, then how long will it take you to do the bonding?
Well, then we have to get all the bond resolutions and have all of those passed. Once those are all approved, and I'm not sure if any of these are going to require any public hearings. I don't think any are, but if we do have that, that's going to have to.
Well, we always have a public hearing on the budget, on the capital.
No, but like, for example, the water projects, I know you have to have a separate.
Paving,
Right.
curbing, we go out to bid.
I'm just wondering, so let's say we approve the budget in April, then how much time will it take before they actually have the bond resolutions?
I'm thinking like 3 months.
So
But in this case.
You know what that
We
means?
can use part of because in the operating budget, there was money that was set aside towards capital projects, so we could sort of advance it if we need to.
I would
So-
suggest that they'll be right in the middle of summer and summer heat with that time frame. So whether it's that or a dollars that you've aggregated so that we can expedite it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking that once we get the capital budget approved, then we can use whatever funds to do that.
Let me ask a
to hold
question.
us over.
If we put money in the operating budget for that, why do we have to borrow if we basically?
Well, we don't. If we put it in the operating budget, then we don't have to.
Okay, so then.
That's the
How
point of
much
doing
did you
it.
put in the, is in
I
the
believe
breakfast?
it was 1.3, I think it was, in operating. That's different budget.
Right, but that you were how much that, of that budget could we use for this? You're saying if
Well,
there was
if they
money.
need, if they need to do it now, then we'll use it for that.
Listen, this doesn't have to be, what I'm
Okay.
suggesting is that right now, this is a meeting to discuss the capital budget. We know we have, say, $28 million of requests. We have, if $32,000 could be taken from the operating budget, we could basically, at the next town board meeting, authorize the $32,000.
It's 370.
$370,000.
I'm sorry, okay.
No, you're looking at the
You're
old
looking at an
one.
old one.
It's
This is a
been
new one.
updated.
Look at
That
this one.
It went up from 32,000
To 370,000.
Yeah, it was put in at the wrong number.
Okay, so if it's
We doing this again?
370, why don't we just take it from the operating budget, now, and then we could just, it won't be a capital budget. This way it has to get
Okay.
done. So why don't we
I
just do
mean,
that?
but you know what?
Then
The
you can
capital budget is to approve the capital projects.
Yeah, but,
How it gets funded is a different issue.
yeah, but
It can be
Okay,
funded in two
so
different
let's-
ways.
No, but I'm saying that if we all as a board right now say, you know what, we know we have to do the HVAC in the town court. Nobody's objecting to it. So this way, we won't have, now we have $370,000 less of a capital budget request, because we could do this now and then.
Well, we should be working on that now,
Yeah.
because you said, how much lead time you said you need?
5 months.
So
5 months,
why
so
don't we
we're
just
already
put
in
it on-
February. It's gonna be summer by the time they
Yeah,
get this
so
in
why
there.
don't we
They're gonna
just
be at the,
take
they're
it
gonna
out
be in
of
the same situation they
take it
were
out
for
of-
last
We have $1
summer.
million.
But the budget, what I'm saying is, you have the budget, and then you have the funding. So
Okay.
you can approve it in the budget. How we pay for it is whether we go to bond or whether we do it through operating.
Right, but this is something that you really would like to happen.
Well, that's
quick.
right, but what
it's-
Roberta's
But that she's saying it's
saying
irrelevant.
Is it's irrelevant for this discussion.
Right,
Right,
exactly.
Because that's a separate discussion in terms of how it's funded. So that'll be sorted out.
The
We
only
know that
reason, the only
it's-
reason I said that is because I'm nervous about the $28 million bond, having a bond that's so much. And I'm saying, to me,
25 million.
it's 25, right. So I'm nervous about the dollar amount, so I'm saying if we
But we
take
should
the
probably
three
go
step.
through it, right?
Yeah.
So we should, why don't we hear him first? Because you said a couple of times how nervous you are, but I think we should probably go through it.
Okay, that's
So we
fine.
can understand all
All
that
right.
is here.
So
Okay.
that system's shot, it's not
Right.
working.
We got that.
Needs to be
I'm
replaced.
going- yes.
All right, so we could go to Public Works, we have camera replacement at Town Hall. That's an estimate of $50,000. That came from MIS. They said the cameras that we currently have here are outdated.
I'm sorry, do you know how much we're paying currently to chill the courtroom? Because that would be a cost that we would no longer need
That
if
would
we actually
offset.
do this.
Oh, yeah, well, we've had that same unit is now over at the library, because they had a situation there.
It's like $6,000
A month.
a month is what we're paying
Okay,
when we're running it.
good, okay.
Who's going to be the project coordinator for the HVAC? Who's going to be,
I mean, it's a building maintenance issue, so it would be a combination of our building maintenance department as well as our engineering department to go through with the actual installation of it. So,
Yeah, just write down Brian.
I don't even know why he's going to just say Brian. It just makes it easier.
I mean, yeah, you can put myself.
Yes, there you go. See, Brian? Sorry. Just put your name down, everything. You have to work when you get upstairs. You delegate.
Yeah, but he can delegate, right.
He's going to delegate it. Okay. So Public Works, so
That
now,
was a good try, it really was. That was almost, almost
yes.
good try.
So Tristan, who really works very closely with all the departments on the cameras, and I got to tell you, the guy does a bang-up job. He says the cameras are just, they're at their lifespan, so it's time to replace them.
Right.
And you remember, I know, Francis, you were there when we walked through with the security system we put in place some years ago. It just,
how old is it?
it's going back, I want to say 8 years maybe already?
Yeah.
Probably.
And what's the life of the cameras? Do you
I
have an
think
idea?
5.
5 years? Okay.
And I think system-wide, we're trying to we have various suppliers, right, of cameras at our various facilities. So I think part of what the MIS department is trying to do is to get all the facilities on the same software,
Makes
on the
sense.
same platform. So it's all, you go to one service or platform and you can see everything right
That
there.
makes sense.
What
Will this
what a
be-
concept.
Will this be operating or capital?
This is in the capital.
Capital.
Like, I think like
Everything.
Roberta said, how it's paid for later is
Yeah, but-
probably another discussion.
And when do you think this is going to be done?
He's ready to go.
Okay. Yep. It's only $50,000.
All right, the next is the asbestos abatement at the Greenberg Nature Center. This is $60,000. It was discovered as they were starting to do work on one of the bathrooms that they were doing a renovation on, that in one of the crawl spaces, there is littered asbestos from some of the pipes that are through there. And based on estimates Brian went through from previous projects, this is what it would cost to get that work cleaned up.
What areas are affected? And because I know they just painted,
Upstairs. This is in the crawl space.
okay,
So to shut off the water, to do other work, you have to get into the crawl space, and obviously it's,
that's where the problem is, okay.
yeah,
And this will be done this year?
That's twice we go there.
yes.
It is, yeah.
And
one day.
You'll be coordinating that?
With the nature center, because it's in conjunction with their renovation of the bathroom project.
And then next, we have the purchase of new generators for the communication systems, $310,000. These are for 2 of the tank sites. These communication systems basically are backups for the police, water, anything that goes on a tank, that's our responsibility.
And this will be completed this year?
Yeah, it's a simple project. Nothing simple, but it's not one of the harder ones.
And when are you going to start this? When are you planning on starting this project? The communications?
That would be immediately.
Like tomorrow?
Yeah.
So here's an example of 2 generators of $310,000. the demand at the water tanks is probably a lot less than at an assisted living facility. What do you think the cost and demand would be, if we were to move forward with something where we would require fairly substantial building?
Oh, it's
fully
not,
powered?
it's very expensive.
Question is, could you get power to it, or utilities to it?
Oh, you mean to power these things up? That's a great, the point you brought up about the gas, I think Con Ed's still in a moratorium.
Yeah, they're not going to give it
Right.
to anybody.
So
Yeah.
that is problematic. These here, this is a little bit different than running, this is a small setup. We do go out each year for a generator contract, which I think is in the works now, where we have a company come, take a look at every one of our generators, service them, and then on call emergency come in and make repairs, which does happen from time to time.
So do we have natural gas at these water tanks, or do we, what do we do?
No, they're standalone units.
No, they
They're
are.
standalone units?
Yeah, they're standalone. So,
That's why they're so expensive.
yes, and to just reiterate, so on each of our water tanks, there's critical infrastructure that's up there, right, for police, fire, and it's not just
Right.
Greenberg Police, but
Right.
it's also county police.
State.
so- State police. So it really comes down to like emergency services when some of those things go down.
So you're using actual fuel, and you have to keep the tanks filled, is that it?
It's like the library, they were running over there constantly to fill that generator to make sure the heat stayed on. All right, the next projects we have are for the library. And I think I'm going to let Brian talk to these because he's been certainly more involved in this.
What page are you
Page
on?
3.
It's at 3, it's under library.
Yep.
So the first one we have is the vestibule and atrium skylight project. So for anyone that has visited the library, especially during a rain event, you'll know that there's some leaks that take place, especially in the vestibule area. The vestibule area being between the two sliding glass doors when you first enter. If you look up, there's some water damage in the tiles. We met with an architect, worked very closely with the library director, Christina, and they believe, talking with the architect, the vestibule and the area, I guess, in front of it, the cover, in other words, is pitched back towards that vestibule area.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, when it rains, the water kind of pours back, and its gravity has nowhere else to go but to that
It's a
area.
bad design to begin with.
Yes.
Yeah.
It
So-
was not engineered properly.
The intent of this project, there's 2 phases. The first phase was to basically remove that front portion, that cover area, if you will, canopy, and to come up with a redesign to better pitch that water and direct it away from the library as opposed to directing it towards the area to begin with. Phase 2 was to also address, as soon as you enter into the library, there's skylights that are up above, which also are a source of water entering into that area. And there has been times where it gets very slippery in there. So the phase 2 is to address that area above, come up with a design to get away from the skylights, if you will, almost create a cover over that. So this project, $880,000, includes the design for the phase 1, the phase 2, as well as for the construction. There is possible grant funding that is through the New York State construction grant. But that's the intent of this project, is to kind of address those 2 issues there, as well as come up with the redesign.
And a while back, we made a commitment that, when in their application for the grant, they had to indicate that if they didn't get the grant, the granting authority wanted assurances that the work would go ahead and that the town would be good for it. But the likelihood of it being, the cost being the entire amount is is not likely. They, you know, they'll get some money, but just don't know how much. So we had to commit to all of it, and it's in the budget now, and then it will be reduced in all likelihood, and maybe even go away, don't know.
The question is, could this be, phased in when you were talking about possible reductions, could this be, split so some of the funding would be for 2023 and the other parts in 2024?
If you do that, it will cost more money to break up a construction project and do it in phases. It'll end up costing more.
No,
And I think it
understand.
becomes problematic, right, for the
I think for the
grant?
grant.
For the
it's
grant,
right.
that's what I thought
Right,
we
because
talked
the
about.
grant, they have to go for the whole project.
Right.
You can't go in piecemeal from one to the next.
And they've already applied for the grant based on the whole thing.
Do you have any thoughts on that?
Horse is out of the barn.
It does what?
The horse
She's
is out of
saying
the
she
barn.
fully agrees with it.
I wouldn't say that. Okay, let me hear Roberta. Roberta, what did you say?
I said the horse is out of the barn.
Oh, the horse is out of the barn.
In other words,
Oh,
we have
okay.
no choice.
No, that's what I thought, that's what I
Yeah.
was thinking, because we already
Right.
went through this when
In other
Christina
words, she
came
agrees
from.
with it.
So since
Right.
these issues have existed since the genesis of the building, do we know for sure that these fixes that we're about to spend, $1 million on are really going to fix them? Or is it, like, has the research borne out that the fixes we're about to do will completely fix this?
I would say yes. I mean, so the architect we have, Fuller and D'Angelo, we've already had passed a resolution, the town board passed a resolution earlier this spring. They've done projects in the town for the nature center, other projects for the library. They're very good architects. They know what they're doing. They came out, multiple times, they've inspected it. They actually went up and took a look at top of the roof. And they believe that's what the cause of the leakage is. So,
Okay.
it's in their professional opinion that this is what's gonna solve that, those leaks
And
and the
the
water
engineer.
infiltrating into the area. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
And
Well,
they're actually subcontracting to the engineer? Is that how it was
Well,
working?
part of the proposal, yes, so there is a line item, if you will, where they can bring in an engineer, a structural engineer, to also reevaluate, come up with a design basically for the canopy area. Because that all has to be structurally sound to make sure
Right,
that.
right,
can be
and that
supported.
will also be a second check on it being
Right.
more leaky.
As they pull it apart too, if there's anything they see during the course of construction, obviously when they take that front structure down, you're gonna see things.
Could you
Yeah.
give us like a
Because
little
the
bit
water's
more
been
detail
dripping through
before?
it. Because the water's been dripping through it all these years,
Yeah.
so.
Could you give us
Who knows
a
what's in
little
it?
bit more,
Asbestos also
work plan for this? Because this is a major project, and, the thing is,
I think that would come from the design professional, as they get more involved in it.
so we can't get them to do something now, because I have a feeling that this is not gonna be done by the end of this year. I mean, if I.
There's no reason why it shouldn't be.
Well, I'm just giving you based on our,
Yeah, they've done all the background work, they know where the problems are, so it's the construction documents, going out to bid, awarding the job, and then doing the construction, and do you have any idea what the?
Well, I know initially there was some concern with the lead time on the materials, especially when it comes to roofing supplies. I mean, this was back in the fall when we were talking with the architect. There was still some delays with getting those materials, but you're going to have those delays, it sounds like, whether we put it through this year or whether we put it through next year, we're still going to have that possibility of not being able to get construction supplies and being able to move forward with the project itself.
Does this also include the second set of doors because of the cold air that comes in?
There was talks, it wasn't part of the original, the proposal, if you will, but it is something that talking with them
Oh,
might be
that's
able to
that
add on.
would be phase two.
But I think, and we'd have to confirm with the library, but I think when it comes to the grant, there is a timeline where the grant has to be, the or the monies have to be in place by a certain date. And I want to say it's 2024, but that's something we can confirm with them.
Right, because, again, I'm not questioning the project. I'm just trying to figure out a way where we could be more financially, you know, I don't want to see a $200 tax increase for everybody because we're improving everything. Also, I really believe that, I mean, the supplies are getting, you don't have the same problem you had, say, you know, a year ago. It seems to me from, you know, my readings of some paper, you know, the Wall Street Journal or whatever, seems like some costs are going to start, you know, inflation is going to start leveling off or maybe even, you know, go down. So I'm sort of thinking that, you know, if there's like any ways of phasing in some of these projects where it's not, if it's not going to happen in 2023 and it's going to happen in 2024, if we fund part of it in 2024, it may help us tax-wise this year. That's all I'm asking.
Once, you know, the payment schedule, because you're not paying out everything all up front, you know,
Well, that's what
there's a
I'm-
certain amount, but that, you know, until,
But we still have to issue on the construction
PO.
side, we can't issue a partial P, like if the contract's awarded for, say, $800,000, we can't issue a partial purchase order for 400 this year and 400
Right.
next year. We have to issue it for the full amount.
right,
That's
for
where
the
the money
purchase
would have
order,
to be
but in
allocated.
terms of paying out the monies, even though the purchase order might
But
be.
it's still gonna be,
It's
it's still gonna be on the,
still
it's still
yeah.
gonna be on the books for that amount.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'd like to know, let me just ask this. I'd like to know who's accountable that this actually works, right? So we spend a lot of money on consultants, they come in, they give us, hey, in my opinion, this should work. Well, then what if it doesn't? This is not the first time we sat around a table here, matter of fact, it's not the second or third, that we've sat around the table about the library leaking at the entrance doors. And we've always gotten advice and to do whatever we had to do, and we're sitting around the table again. At some point, we need somebody to come in and say, this is what you need to do, no matter, whatever that cost is, this is what you need to do to fix this, finally fix this, so we're not going to sit around the table in the future. I'm not so sure we're getting any assurance from our consultants as to, well, it's their opinion. Well, it's an opinion, it could be wrong, but we've just spent, you know, $800,000.
And that's what I was trying to get at when I was asked the question that I asked. I mean, should we just tear it down and build a regular vestibule?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's, I think the challenge is, though, you're not going to find anyone that's going to come in and going to be able to give that reassurance, because you're really not going to know what the problem is until you start deconstructing everything. I mean, we've had roofing contractors come in and, you know, we clean out, there's a drain up there, and they tell us that, you know, in some instances, it's just a maintenance thing, right? You got to clean out the drain, and so we clean out the drain, and yet we still have these issues. Or they tell us the drain is too small, but yet you go up there and you're constantly making sure that it's clear and the water's flowing properly. Again, I don't think you're going to know that until you really start to peel everything apart and find out what's going on the
All right,
inside.
so at
there's
some
no
point it gets peeled
guarantee-
apart. So one part, just a moment. So at some point it's going to be peeled apart. I think then that's when we pause and we say, okay, somebody give us an assurance
Oh,
that whatever you
I
say,
think you're absolutely right. And you
whatever
know-
we're going to do now that you can see, I can understand they can't tell you what's behind a wall until they take the wall down.
Right.
But once they do that, we need to have somebody that we could say, hey,
Guaranteed.
you're responsible. It didn't work, fix it, right?
Ideally, the architect has some sort of insurance that, you know, that indemnifies, yes? Do we,
No, because
require
the
that?
construction jobs we've had.
Many times they
we've
say
had problems.
they can't guarantee what they can't see.
Well,
No, no, I
and-
mean-
And that project, when that was, I wasn't here at the time, but everything I've heard, there's no as-built, there was no
Right.
punch list done. It was a problematic project. You know, we've had multiple roof issues, we have issues with the heating, you know, we have another issue now that we're looking at. That's why the temporary heater's been out there. It's been running now, but there's still things to be looked at. that's a real devil in the details building. And until you start tearing it apart, you just, it's very hard.
So in
Right,
your-
and even
in your-
with plans.
In your opinion, since you guys have been working closely with this and looking at this, to Francis's point, are we at the point now that we just kind of need to tear it down and then come back with it? Because, again, $1 million is a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I just want to figure out, at this point, why would we go and spend this amount of money if we're still unsure what the outcome's going to be?
I think, I can't speak for the library and what their wishes were, but clearly you want to make sure that you're going to be able to fix the problem, right? We don't want to go back there every time it rains and have to replace sheetrock and ceiling and go mop things up.
But this is what this is doing, right?
Can I make a
In theory,
suggestion?
yes.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion? Because Francis was on the right track, and
I'm sorry,
and
what was
Rich.
that?
Oh, my God.
I'm sorry.
I meant
the record
Rich.
on
Did
that,
I say
please.
Francis? Oh, I'm sorry.
Francis.
That once they start deconstructing and they see what's there, what damage has been done, water damage has been done internally that they can't project now, how it was built, because even if we have plans, not as-built, but even if we have the construction plans, we don't know what the contractor did and did not, especially if there were no inspection reports. So, once they open it up and look at it, they might say, hey, we just looked at this is just unfixable. It doesn't work with our plans. We suggest that you tear it down all the way. Things like that happen then.
But then we can save all this, we can save this $1 million, and we can pay a fraction of this to figure out what's going on, because I feel
Well,
like
they're going
that's
to
the direction that.
demolish to some extent anyway. They would have to demolish regardless.
But then we're not
right?
paying the
Well,
$800,000.
but this is what they're telling us we need to find out what we need to do, and if they
Not-
open it, if they open it up, and this scope of work no longer becomes feasible, then we wouldn't continue spending the money to complete it.
But you're going to appreciate this, but we're going to go out to bond for that amount, but now we're saying
And that's
that,
basically, right.
but that's so, I get an A for that. We're going to go out to bond for.
But then we still, let's say we pay $400,000 to
Right.
figure out that we need to go a different direction.
Right.
Then we have $400,000 that we can use to go in a different direction.
But then that's
And
why I
then if
said
it-
where maybe you put in 400,000 because.
I don't think you could do that, because
Yeah.
once you deconstruct it, you got to do something.
gotta do it.
Otherwise,
Right.
We got to be able to
it's like,
fix
it's
that.
like taking off the front of a building and saying, well,
Right,
okay,
but
now
on
let's
the other hand,
decide what we're going
It's
to
probably not going to be
do.
done by the end of 2023.
Right, but
That'd
I,
be
Well,
very
we
soon.
don't know.
But I think-
We're
I think
only
the agreement-
hypothesizing. We're not condemning the work that's
No,
been
the
done
other
already.
question.
Hold on, hold on.
the agreement
But-
we enter into should have basically bifurcated where you have getting us to the point where they can see what they need to see in order to say the right direction.
Right.
And then there's a second jumping off point, it's all part of the 800 whatever,
Mm-hmm.
is if that's what is necessary to do it, but if there's a different design that gets us there, we don't want to hold them to doing something that they don't think is going to work.
Let me
Can I
ask
make a
another one.
suggestion? Why don't we have the architects come in and talk to them?
Yeah, let me,
I have a
just as
question.
another question, would it make sense, because I remember when I first was in, there was a proposal to repair a roof, I think it was at the library or at the town hall, and it was $300,000. And I remember Tony Cervello, he basically took, we asked him to take a look, and it turned out it was $25,000 the second time. And so we basically got the same job done for $275,000 less than originally thought. Would it make sense, since there's like no guarantees, to get a second opinion before we, I'm talking about because we've had water.
Well, how did you come to this point? I mean, you probably didn't just interview one person.
Right, so this cost was based on an estimate provided by the architect. So the architect went out, they went to, based on their prior experience on other projects, as well as the contractors that they use, were able to obtain pricing and gave us an estimate of what they expected the total project to cost. So that $880,000 that you see, that's for the total project, including the architect's fees, the engineer's fees, the constructor's fees for the entire canopy area as well as for the skylight area. This is, how much the town spends is contingent upon how much money we ultimately would get through the grant program. But at this point, we don't know how much that money is.
And that
So
grant
that's
is-
why.
But haven't we already agreed to do this
Yes,
when we applied for the grant?
Yes.
yes.
So isn't it a
Yes.
moot point?
Well, the only thing that's fungible is the amount of
The
money
amount.
Okay.
until the grant is awarded. I'm not sure, I don't remember.
And the grant could be
when it-
worded to, it's to fix the problem, so as long as you're fixing the problem, they
Right.
shouldn't object to doing whatever the work is
So,
necessary to
so
fix the problem.
since we have, John Emmerich who's advocating for funding, in Albany for us, should we be asking him to reach out to the New York State,
I think
That was
once
done.
you, I think the grant precludes getting another grant, if I'm not mistaken, but
no, but
maybe.
to get it approved, if this is being awarded by New York State, maybe,
We have two more
our
departments to
advocate in
do.
Albany should be
don't know
lobbying
why.
for it.
Like, these are the biggest.
Well, it's not so much,
Why they
they
all
have
locked into this one?
a big pool of money. They will take that money and decide,
Each one of
because
them is enormous.
libraries all over the
Right.
state are applying for projects,
court.
for money. So they will determine what projects warrant the monies and how much. So we don't, it's not like a specific grant for X amount of dollars. It is,
I think the
they're
idea is
asking for the total amount, but they're not necessarily going to get
Right,
the
but
total.
I think what I'll do is I'll do whatever I can to see if we could reach out and get state funding for this, as much as we can.
Yeah,
It doesn't
it's
hurt.
worth checking to see
Okay.
if you can get a
Yeah, I'll work on
secondary
that. Okay.
grant. But we
And-
just don't know for how much. at
No,
this
or it
point.
could be part of, right.
And part of their proposal from the architect was for construction management also. So they're going to be out there while the work is taking place. So I guess as far as reassurances are concerned, as things come up, as they start to tear everything apart, there's going to be somebody out there to see exactly what's going on, report back, and then make adjustments as necessary.
Brian, did they specifically say, commit to weekly visits or to 2 visits a week and reports to?
I believe it's weekly.
Pardon me?
I believe it's weekly.
Weekly.
And those are
So-
weekly meetings with the contractor as well as with town representation.
Right,
and the
right,
architect.
right.
Might I suggest, since we have 3 more large departments to do today, and we haven't even gotten to halfway through
Page 3.
DPWs, is that we listen to what the topics are and not get, we don't get into basically managing the property, the project in advance, right? So, and if we have more questions,
So let
we
me
can
ask,
do
would it make
callbacks.
more sense to have, instead of making everybody wait around, to do a little more thorough today, and then, continue, a more detailed analysis of each department request, 2 weeks from now and 3 weeks from now, because I find
I
this
thought there was
is-
an urgency to do the
There's
capital
really,
budget.
we could, there's a lot of work that Roberta and I have to do anyway in terms of analyzing it. I'd rather not keep I'd rather feel we're done with Public Works, maybe take one other
I
department
don't think
today.
we're
We're not,
halfway.
we're not done with
No, I said I'd rather be done
Not
with Public
close.
Works.
Oh.
We're not even halfway.
Well, yeah.
Good, so
right.
then, we don't have to keep it, I'd rather really be thorough.
I'm
Yeah.
okay with that.
You
So
know,
what's-
we don't have to
Let them
really,
go.
I mean.
So we just doing, so if I'm
Should we
understanding,
help-
we just doing Public Works now, and
Why don't
then,
we-
and we're
We've had-
rescheduling?
We've had Captain
What?
sit here for,
But I want to grab, we can grab them now, and. Captain Valentine? Chief Powell?
Hey, Cap?
Cap,
Could you come in, please? Thank you.
let's ask their
I
preference.
think this is better, because
yeah.
we're getting better
Captain?
ideas.
It just means it's only going to be pushing what is on the later agendas.
Yeah. I could
Right.
reach out,
You know,
we might be
But,
able to.
yeah, but he's the one
There's a
that's going
grant
to keep loading it up.
Okay,
We
well
could
then,
get the whole-
then we
might be able to get the whole thing
we
for
cut it
this.
off. We just, we're gonna, with
I was supposed to
mercy.
do it right now.
So, we have a long list here, and I know you have been sitting here in the interest of time. What was the question?
Fascinated by
Fascin-
the discussion nonetheless.
Right.
I'm thinking
We
that
can
we're better
reschedule-
off,
to
like,
reschedule.
Putting it like 2 weeks from
Can we
now, and then
reschedule
putting
2
you on
weeks?
first, and then not people basically paying attention and really, not keeping you until
Because you're
midnight.
going to be here a while.
I mean, does that make any sense to you?
Run by the chief when he comes back, I'm sure.
I'm sure he'll be amenable to that.
Okay.
so.
Here,
Okay, I think.
Are you working tonight?
Oh, okay, another reason why we don't want to, keep you. So if, I don't know where Chief Powers, if you can relay that and just give us a message back. And we're
What
gonna
would be your
continue.
estimate of how long it'll take you to go through your items?
Depends on your questions.
So assuming we have as much time and questions as your presentation, you don't think I'm going to get an answer out of you two? What would that be? So that tells me how much time your presentation is.
nothing ever,
It's just,
Nothing
a-
ever goes quick, I would say 10 minutes is what
Okay.
I'm expecting.
Okay.
So you about 40 minutes, right?
okay,
Well, between questions and things.
right.
Because you see how this is going,
Yeah,
it's-
so-
We only
This
got
is
one,
easy.
we only got one question, sorry. I want to make sure we have your thorough time because we can't not,
So we just have to be careful, Paul, not sending a lot of emails to Joan, put this person on the agenda, put them on first, if we're going to be going into these in the later weeks. If we're going, I thought there was some urgency in getting these things done, which is why they're scheduled the way they are.
Paul,
no.
Paul,
Exactly.
you can do it.
The longer I delay this,
No, it's only, it's more work, so I
the
think,
tax decrease this year.
right, no. So I think we should probably, I think in the interest of time, I think, we should probably move this.
So how many are we doing
Appropriate.
tonight?
I think one, look at,
Well,
we'll,
Garrett's sitting upstairs, right?
Garrett's in a meeting, he should be wrapping up, and so we can advise him
I
that.
believe is here as well.
Parks is a big,
Is big as well, that's why, so we, yeah, but I think, so I think the impression was that we thought that this was going to be an urgent
Well, how
matter,
much is
so.
there in executive session?
20.
We have a lot to talk about in executive session, so. How mu- I mean, the same will go for,
That's fine.
Joe? So I know you just heard the same request that we just gave to Captain Valentine. So again, we would like to extend the same thing because again, we want to make sure that you have enough time to go through and we don't want to rush you and that this is important. So we
So is
ask
your
if we
option
can just wait or we can just move you along, but
move it to
waiting.
another day?
I'm sure I could call Jerry and tell him not to come, but
Okay.
right now.
Is-
If you want to know how long ours is going to be.
Yeah.
Depends on whether I present or Jerry.
Well,
Call him and tell him we'll reschedule.
okay, all right, we appreciate the accommodation, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. All right, so, see how that works? That's, okay, so now I can't, I was gonna say where my glasses, but they're in my hands, so let me just find
So you want
them.
to go to part 2 at the library?
No,
Yes.
So should we try to do the
Joking,
police
joking.
since
you gonna say, Tim, you gonna say 40
the
minutes?
day off? and he's gonna say it?
Okay, so he's gonna be sitting here for another hour and a half.
The thing is, I think we should just.
Honestly,
we have
let's-
too many
let's- seriously.
executive sessions.
I mean, there's like so much on the agenda.
Yeah.
We're not, but not, we're
Do
not going
do you
to.
want us, would it be simpler and not, because I think this is going to go on for a few more meetings, if we kind of go through at a 30,000-foot view of these things?
Okay.
And as you guys, I'm sure there's going to be questions on all of it. You could absorb it and come back with this at a later point with questions, and then maybe you can get to them.
Yeah, I wish I would have said that 15 minutes ago,
Yeah.
which is what I said 15 minutes ago.
Okay, yes,
You did.
we're done.
All right, so the library patio retaining wall, they've got, I think, a grant to do work under a wall behind the library, one of the older walls. Jason Capola, the town engineer, went out, and the wall is compromised. I think Brian, who's also a structural engineer, went out and took a look at it. So that's the work to,
Is that wall in danger of falling?
It's compromised, I'll say that. It's definitely, we need to take a look at it, yes. And the urgency here is that the patio project that's going in there is completely funded by I believe it's NYSERDA grant, and there's a timeline with the patio grant project. So I believe that has to, the funding, and it has to be installed and paid for within, I believe it's 2 or 3 years. And there's no sense in putting a new patio in front of a retaining wall if in a year or two, we're gonna have to go in and rip out the wall and take away the patio to then replace the wall.
Or-
Could the
or if
retaining
something
wall-
happens to the
could
retaining wall, destroys it.
be done next year?
No.
No.
No, because the retaining wall has to be done first, and then the patio project has
No,
to
but
be
I'm saying,
put in
could that
place.
whole project be done next year?
I don't believe, no. To me,
Can we
it'd be too tight of a timeline, because by the time you get the funding in place for the retaining wall, put it out to bid, get a contractor in there, build the retaining wall, finish the retaining wall, then put the patio project out, get that constructed, I think you're cutting it very close to the deadline when the NYSERDA grant funding runs out.
So is the NYSERDA grant
Pass this
funding
down to Gina.
different than the library guild fundraising?
Oh, wait a minute, I'm going to play something else that you read.
It is. So I believe the guild was to cover the costs for design, I believe,
Okay.
and then the NYSERDA was supposed to kick in for the actual patio.
And how much is the NYSERDA?
That I don't know. That's a completely separate project. So that $350,000 that you see there, that does not even include the patio project.
Okay.
Because according to the library, that is 100% funded through the library and through the grant. So that $350,000 is strictly just for the retaining wall.
And you don't want to mess with the retaining wall.
No, it's
You know,
no joke.
That's compromised, because then, yeah, it'd be much more of a serious problem.
All right, so we'll continue on the Public Works vehicles and machinery. First two are very straightforward. These are rear loaders for the sanitation garage.
Page 6.
Page 6, sorry.
That's Gina.
This is for the sanitation garage.
Yep.
Cost is $620,000. Next
Wait.
piece of equipment is a street sweeper, $325,000. These vehicles, especially this year, are out every day for the most part. And they're,
Chief, I'm sorry, excuse me, because Chief, you got the message from Captain Valentine, we're okay? So we do apologize for,
Yeah.
okay, all right, appreciate the accommodation. Thank you.
Thank you both.
bye guys, sorry.
Okay.
It's all their
She's going to
fault.
give you dinner.
No, it's Joe Danko's fault.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, I appreciate it, thank you.
We all love you, Joe. All right, so we went through the street sweeper.
Wait, what page are we on?
Page 6. This is the equipment.
Yeah.
Next is a pickup truck with plow, $57,000. This is explanation.
Are there any, like, if you had to prioritize, are there any, requests for vehicles and machinery that could be deferred for a year?
Paul, I'm going to tell you this, and I wish Gerard was here, we do have some pictures for you. I'm going to say no. These are the boots on the ground. These are out all the time, every day, doing the work, the town's work every day. Sanitation garage. You see what happens, how many emails we get a week, or this or that, the other thing. These vehicles you see here are doing the work each day. This is not something, if something goes down, you got problems. And our garage is telling us that this is needed, and there's nothing that can be deferred here. And you don't want to get caught up, what you're going to hear later with the roadway paving, where we kick the can down the road, and now we're paying the price for it. I'm, in the strongest sense adamant that our mechanics are giving us good advice. Actually, been working with Frank Morbido, too, to kind of look at some of the auction stuff and how we could save things for a little bit longer. The town has always had a good fleet, and we need to keep this going. And it's, again, these are your boots on the ground, the most important people in this town, no disrespect to anybody here, are using these things to do the work.
And I think it's also a safety, like with regards to the bucket truck.
Yeah.
It's not so much, oh, we just want to get a new truck. It's a safety issue with the bucket truck, because the existing truck, every year, the arms that hold up the bucket have to get inspected and certified.
Yeah.
And on this truck in particular, the one that we're looking to replace, it failed this year. So that's one bucket truck, and that's a truck that they use. This past Friday night, we had that high wind event and the severe cold, and there was a tree that fell down on Sprain Road as well as, there were people on Topland and Randolph. So that's a truck that is used, especially in an emergency situation like that.
And this is stuff that's used when things are usually bad, a lot of times bad things are going down. The front end loader, the jet truck, the bucket truck Brian was talking about, the plow trucks. These are things that we need to do the business of the Department of Public Works.
Are all or some of these pieces of equipment by the same manufacturer?
So like I said before, we try to keep everything kind of streamlined, so most of our stuff is Mac. They're adamant down there. I got to tell you, you got to take a trip down to the repair garage.
Yeah, I'd love to, but my question is that since we're talking about buying so many pieces of equipment at the
Yeah.
same time, if we can get some kind of reduction in pricing.
Oh,
because-
all this stuff is off bid, and I know Brian's been with this association, talking to Hernani with certain things that the county's putting out. So we look at all those angles.
Okay.
The next page, which is 7, we're going to continue with, there's another dump truck, there's a wheel balancing machine.
What's a
Again,
trommel screener?
That is a machine that you take all the stuff that we dig out of the roads and all our projects, we go through, we create topsoil, item, and we don't have to purchase any material. Chuck Pateman started that some years ago. It was a very successful
And
program.
there are different sized drums?
Yes. Maybe that could be the next tour we take.
And that's, so there's an upfront cost, right, for the screener, but right now, we purchase topsoil, especially if it's, if we're working on a particular project. So the thought being that as time goes on, as we're doing excavation from other projects, you could take that material, you put it through the screener,
I got
and
it.
then it basically screens out all the larger rocks and debris. and
So
then-
how much money do we spend on topsoil annually?
I don't know that number off the top of my head.
We
We can get you that.
We can get it to you. And it's also the getting rid of the material. We'll get you those numbers.
Okay,
It's clearly,
just trying to make sure
Yeah.
that, it's a cost-effective
it's,
solution.
you're saving more than
Okay.
you're spending. The wheel balancing machine in-house, we do our own wheel work and tires. The mobile.
When you say old, how old is old? The old machine?
I think it's 15 years old.
And what's the life on that?
I'd have to ask Gerard, but I follow with that. The mobile column lift actually was auctioned off, the old one. It was bent. This is a replacement for that. These are used to raise the vehicles as they work on them. They're all automated. I think everybody's aware with the issues we got down at the garage with the environmental oil issue. Those were used to be underground jacks.
Yeah.
These are now above ground, and they're all automated, so it picks the vehicles up.
Up and you do it that
Yeah.
way. Okay.
It's a very nice system. All right, this is going to be a big one here. So this is road resurfacing. So we've been back and forth, and I know Paul gets a lot of the emails about the roadways in town. And there was a report done back in 2017 by Transmap, which valued the town's roadway infrastructure at a little over $177 million. At the time, they suggested a total fix of the town roads at $16.3 million. During that time, they highlighted, different levels of roadway conditions. We were advised, after now trying to prepare next year's bid, that there were roadways that were on this 2017 report that are still not done and were redlined back then. So they, and over those years, these roads have obviously deteriorated worse. I ask you to take a ride down Ardsley Road, take a ride down Park Road. What was the other one you went out and saw? If you go into Old Edgemont, there's areas that really, when these people are calling in and writing emails about these, generally the roads are in poor condition. Back then, they had recommended how much to put in each year to kind of get a handle on it in a certain amount of years. So this budget of $5 million would start that. that process to get up to where we need to be with the roadway system in town.
It's, since these were identified years ago, was money earmarked for them years ago and just wasn't spent because?
No, the money's spent each year for paving, and we get a little bit left over. We
Okay.
try to use that the next year to start out of the gate earlier,
Okay.
because the plant's generally open in April. God willing, it's a little bit earlier this year.
So my question is just about whether this number is reflective of deferred maintenance, or the money that we've allocated in the past has actually been spent on those roads in the past.
Because it sounded like it's deferred maintenance.
Right.
Right.
We kicked the can down the road a little bit here, so this is kind of catching up. And that's.
So, wait a minute. And so we're confident then that this $5 million would then be spent within this budget period.
We are ready to go.
Okay, so the answer is yes. We are
Yeah.
So
confident.
how much
yeah.
roadway, well, I guess if you're saying it's 16 million, we have 11 million that's worth of roadway that's going to continue to deteriorate.
Yeah, if you don't fix it, it doesn't get better by itself, so
But we used to, we had a company go around years ago.
that's this company.
And even before 2017, that went around and suggested, if we would just seal some of the roads, or you get alligator, and that's not taken care of, so the water seeps in, freezes, and now you have a real problem. Are we doing any sealing?
We did.
Before it becomes a problem?
This past year, we used, was it New York State
Seal coating.
seal coating? So they came in, they did roadways in town. It's gotten to the point, though, with the reclamation that sometimes it causes more problems. They use high heat, they burn up vegetation. So, for instance, Secor Road, we use that method.
I mean, just sealing
No.
what they put down, we don't do that.
No.
Okay.
It's gotten to the point
There's
where,
going to be more state aid in the budget for road repaving. I think the CHIPS funds have been increased.
I saw something from.
Well, and we
yeah.
do
Well, we
apply
hope.
for CHIPS. There's 3 through New York State. There's CHIPS, there's Extreme Winter Recovery, and then there's a third one that we always apply for every year. But that's a
Yeah.
reimbursement program, so it's based upon how much money you spend out.
50 minutes.
And then that's how you get reimbursed. So that's why the intent of this, and again, that $16 million was in 2017.
Right.
And that's what it would have cost to bring all of those roads at the time that were rated as poor or very poor condition, to bring those up to good condition, if you will. And obviously, since then, those roads haven't gotten any better. Now, we've chipped away at that, because every year we've gotten $2-3 million towards paving, but it doesn't equate to the nearly $16 million that they had at that time. And we've kind of exhausted with the hot-in-place recycling and the double micro surface, the technologies that they have out there. We found that those are very good for long, straight, wide-open roads. And we've done those on a lot of those roads, like the ones on Executive Boulevard and the ones on Secor.
Taxter.
And Taxter. But they're not necessarily the best practice for small residential areas, for numerous reasons.
We used it in Poets Corner. We burned trees up, we burned vegetation up. It worked, but
It's good on the main roads that are
Yeah.
straight,
yeah.
Better.
Absolutely.
It's actually fairly amazing. I have video of it. It's an amazing
They
process.
did it right in front of your place.
Yeah.
They did it in front of my office in White Plains. It was-
Okay.
That's where we watched it in White Plains.
Yeah.
They used a lot of it.
Mhm.
All right, so that's the roadway resurfacing. Next is curb replacement, various locations, $2 million. Again, we have 131 miles of road. Not every road has curbs on it. But a lot of these roads have been buried by years of asphalt paving. We're doing an emergency job on Mount Joy now, and the engineer came into us the other day. He said they're cutting through 16 inches of asphalt on that road. So it was just paved and paved. Again, every time you used to pave and not mill, things get buried. Curbs get hit. They need to be replaced. We're doing curbs now on New Road and the area off of Dobbs-Ferry Road. This is a constant maintenance issue. So again, this is something where we use the money, we get it, we put a contract out, and we go through it.
So are the curbs really kind of in conjunction with the roadway
We
resurfacing?
tried to do the curbs the year before, where we're going to pave. So this year, most of ours at Heights was done. Last year, the curbs were done. And then Con Ed came in and kind of...
Well, that was my next question.
Yeah.
You know, coordinating with Con Ed,
Yeah.
and then in the areas that you have Veolia, because how often does that happen? You do the work and they come in and they rip it up the next year.
They do that. It's not as bad as it used to be. There's a lot more coordination with them.
Okay.
Martino DeBrozio, our code enforcement officer, has a good relationship with Con Ed. And when they get off track, he pulls them back in line.
But like Hillside Avenue, we just did that, like, what is it, less than 2 years ago, and now they're gonna tear
But
up the road.
it's not as bad as, it's not going to be that bad. It's more towards the shoulder. Garrett Duquesne, who's been working with the state and Con Ed, everybody, is very confident that that won't be a problem.
Yeah, and it's also holding them to task and making sure they do a good job.
Yeah,
Also,
and they
what-
pay us for,
And that's also
so,
what they pay, and they have to bring it back to its original state.
well, if there's, in like the case of Ardsley Heights, they'll reimburse us for the work that we did, and that's all worked out through engineering, and then we get a check. Now, Columbia, the area off of Hartsdale East, Hartsdale Avenue is getting blown up. That's going to be another area we're going to have to go and look, because I was through there today. It's,
But they're gonna, that's Con Ed work, right?
that's Con Ed work, but
Is it going to affect that beautifulness sidewalk?
no, no. But that's going to be something we're going to have to really sit down with them and look at. Do we need to go in there now, because all the cuts they have in there, and resurface?
The Scarsdale, like, requires them to do the full, both, the whole street, and, we've been talking about, requiring that, the same thing. Is there any chance we could move on that?
We were started to look at a bunch of the codes, and I've been working with Joe and Amanda and Peggy. They've been excellent, so there's a few things in the works. Con Ed is now starting to fight back on that a little bit.
But they haven't fought back on Scarsdale. Yeah, because,
Right.
when I'm biking around, they're doing like, they'll mess up the road, half the road, and then they repave the whole thing.
And I think that's part of the challenge here, is that when they do work in the town of Greenberg, they will restore everything that they disturbed. So if they disturb the curb, they'll replace the
Yeah.
curb. But the problem is, they'll only do it on their one side.
But why can't we get the same treatment that Scarsdale gets?
Well, I don't see why not. I think it's just a matter on our end. Just
Right.
Amending the
That's
code.
exactly right.
If you look at College Corners, we were out there today on a complaint, and it's crazy that half the road is done and the half the road is,
But the question is like, what can we, do,
Yeah, we sit around the table year after year saying the same thing,
Yeah.
so we need to know why
Yeah,
why we don't
can't we
have.
just like introduce a local law?
we can.
And do it like before the capital budget, and then we could,
Joe has a
I'll
comment.
have a law drafted for your review very shortly.
See, I see he's got the Scarsdale site up.
Hey, this is private, right?
Was.
Okay.
All right, so that's the curbs.
Maybe we could ask Con Ed to do like the worst roads, like, they were paid, they kind of.
They know in advance, like they told us about Columbia in that area, last year. Ardsley Heights was another one that kind of, worked through. And, Andy Viviano, who's out in the field, really has a gift of getting that work done.
And it's to the benefit of town, really,
Yep.
that after, like, for us to work with Con Ed, because once they go in, if they're doing a gas main replacement project, then there's no need for them in the foreseeable future to really dig anything up, because in theory, there shouldn't be any leaks. On our end, we'll go in, we'll check our water mains, our sewer mains, to make sure that there's no, issues there. And then from there, we're trying to get into the practice of doing complete roads, so the subsurface utilities are all replaced, then you focus on the curbs, and then you pave the road, and hopefully you don't have to go back there for another 15, 20 years.
So is there
You
like
walk
a-
away from it.
So, I know, we've been talking, again, about forcing them to repave the whole road, for a few years. Is there like a disadvantage to being, requiring them to do more? Are we getting more from them by, not forcing them?
No,
Do you follow what I'm saying?
If you can have them do curb to curb, if it's a slippery slope, it's something we'll work with Joe on.
It depends on the width of the street.
There's a lot of factors, so that's something, let us work with Joe and his team to kind of come up
Okay.
with an answer on. All right, I know this Paul's going to tell us to skip the money on this next one.
But you can skip that.
All right, pedestrian safety, this is Juniper Hill sidewalk.
That's good. All right,
Is that really necessary?
Yes, it is very necessary.
I don't know.
Yes,
Something
yes,
we
it
could
is.
probably- What do you think, Paul?
And that should start tomorrow.
I don't see why.
I don't see why either. I'm just waiting for the date.
Right. So you don't think waiting about 5 years is?
Not at all. No, that's
Aaron
unacceptable.
Hayward, our newest engineer, I think the design is 90% done. There's a few quirks he's going to try to work out, but we're getting there.
You
So do
solved
we
the
have
problem
some-
with that one area?
Yeah.
That's what he's looking
That
at.
he's looking at. So do we have an anticipated time of when your engineer will be able to have some type of answer?
Well, I think we maybe offline should talk more about staffing later, but
Oh, okay.
we'll hopefully have an answer for you in the next few weeks.
Okay.
Drainage projects. God knows this was an issue, right?
Yeah.
I think this year we were really able to attack some of the biggest problems we've had. Nowhere near a complete fix, but we did a lot of work on Trumbullson Brook, Manhattan Brook, Bronx River, all these areas where we've had issues. I think the telltale with some of the storms we've had, we really haven't had that impact, but there's a lot more work to do.
That's good.
Drainage on Stone Avenue. This is another project that's been in the works for a while. It's with the consulting engineer that is to re-divert stormwater that has been going through people's backyards that we would now be put in the street. DPW retaining wall replacement. This is behind our garage facility in Ardsley.
There's
The
another
wall-
thing that I've heard now since I've been on the board.
Oh, yeah.
Which is 2016.
Yep, and it needs to get done. It's been designed, it's been designed, we went out to bid, the bids came in off the charts higher than, so this funding would then allow us to replace the wall.
Yeah, we have some previous capital funding that was
Yes.
allocated last year and in years past. So that equates to about $1.5 million. The bids that we received earlier this year came in, it varied, but anywhere from 2.5 up to almost $3 million for the work to take place. So that's why we're requesting the additional 1.5 to then help cover the total cost of construction.
Is there like any companies that basically will do like a financial analysis and basically say, you know what, we think that, supplies are gonna go down, and construction costs are gonna go down?
The retaining
No,
wall.
I'm just throwing out, for some of these construction projects.
You can't
Reading
determine
into
that.
a crystal ball,
Yeah,
using a
exactly.
crystal ball, I don't know that.
Hell, you can, because we're going to replace it.
And listen, we could take a ride down there and show you what's going on.
But so are we doing it with railroad ties again or
No.
something else?
That was utility poles.
Utility poles.
And this is gonna be finished this year?
It needs to get done.
Yeah, it has to be.
It's already designed, so as soon as the funding's
Let's
in
go.
place, then we immediately can put it out to bid, and then from there.
So you would
we can
figure
get
it will
bids.
be.
Is it-
It'll be done
Is
this
it
year.
like rocks behind chicken wire?
You gotta see what's out there now.
Okay.
Oh,
No, I mean the new
design? No,
design.
no,
The
no.
No, the
Okay.
new design is gonna be, it's gonna be steel piles, and there's gonna be a concrete facade, if you will, that kind of goes in between.
So why wasn't this done in the past? I mean, literally, this has been on our calendar since 2016, 2006, I'm sorry. Talking about that, because when I did my tour, when I first came on the board,
Yep.
one of the places you took me was to the back of that highway.
That's
the
how they got the
garage.
utility poles.
Exactly, exactly. And yes, we're going to do this, and we committed to doing it, and it never gets done.
Well, there was a repair done at some point. This is the replacement of the wall. So last year, or the year before,
So next year, this is not going to,
will not be on.
will not be on.
That's the commitment?
Promise?
It's gotta get done.
Yep.
It was told, like Ken just said, oh, you can't wait on that wall. Apparently you can since 2006, because that's what I was told in my wonderful tour that I was given. It was great. But it's, whatever reason, other things obviously kicked it off.
All right, next is the old Jackson Avenue culvert.
And that's where all the barriers
Yes.
are. Okay.
So we went out,
I saw
the
that.
highway department went and cleaned up the best they could, but it needs to be replaced. So that's the money for that.
And what's the timing on
The
that?
engineer has it now, so they're working on the design. So this will be ready for hopefully spring, summer.
So is this?
Okay, just
I'm
so
sorry.
that you know that Lee Canale, who is the former mayor of Hastings and is on the board for St. Andrews, which is where this is, called me, and actually, he thought it was county, but it wasn't, and asked about that, and just because it was unsightly, so they were complaining. So these guys went and just kind of straightened everything out and made it look better,
Yeah, it
as
looks
best as they
better, but
could. They're,
it's still-
you know, they're not they're
No.
Jersey barriers, and,
Yeah, it's a mess.
yeah.
So this municity software update, that's different than what Frank is asking for?
Yeah.
It's
get out of
it's
my
for
head.
It's for DPW and engineering. So it would be more licenses. So we would now be linked to their system.
Let me ask a question about the Old Jackson Avenue culvert. Again, you know, I'm just really concerned really about the tax implications. If that would be put in 2024, what would be the negative for the culvert, the 800,000?
It's failed. I mean, right now you have Jersey barriers temporarily protect people from, or, vehicles from going off this. It's a mess.
Safety.
The railing.
Yeah, it's a
on the
safety
side
issue.
of it,
Safety.
It's a mess.
but it's going
Yeah.
off.
It probably should have been done years ago.
When
but-
after Hurricane
2006.
Ida, when I came out and I turned right to head to try to go to my office, there was a lake with cars floating in it,
Okay.
right within it, okay?
Yeah, it's time. We did take off the Jackson Avenue rehabilitation from our list. It's off the Jackson board.
Why?
Why'd we take it off? After talking to Garrett, and, Garrett is obviously Garrett and Wyndham, very good with the grants. There's no economic development that will be a
That will
result
impact
of
it.
that roadway work.
Okay.
And you're not going to get any grants. Talked to Lieutenant Rexon before he took his new position, and, he went through accident reports, and it's a $9 million, $10 million project, which would take, most of these projects.
It's straightening out the S-curve, and then straightening Sprain Road, so it's a T intersection with a light, and because that is dangerous. My husband had an accident there, and he's one of the best drivers I know. But because he couldn't see that there were cars stopped in front, he came around the curve, and there was no time for him to stop, and he slammed in. But, that being said, I don't know how many accidents there are, but at this point with no urban development, and, people, as long as they're careful, they just have to deal with it.
And they've
It's not
done road
right. I mean, you
clearing.
deal with it too, Paul, right? But, yeah, to not get funding for such an expensive project
Okay.
can't be something we look at right now. Better that we put the money into Troublesome Brook and Manhattan then.
Yeah, that's a real impact. Next is a DPW facilities roof repair and miscellaneous maintenance contract. This is for townwide. Our roofs have had issues upstairs. You could take a look, the leaks, water department, highway department, police department, again, the library you know about,
UICC.
TDYCC, and I know Brian's got pictures he could show you. This is something where we get a plan in place, and we get a team on board. that'll be able
Daycare
to-
center? The daycare
Daycare
center?
center.
Coming.
Lowest bound.
It's on the list.
Oh, yeah, it's on the
Oh, that's
list.
everything, okay. All right,
All right, next, I know
yes.
you're all very familiar with the Babbitt Court,
Yep.
home elevation.
Yep.
Fairview Park Drive Bridge repair, that has been red flagged.
Wait, 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 wait.
Oh, you want to go back to Babbitt?
Yeah,
700
absolutely.
Is that taxpayer money
Yeah,
is being used to elevate the homes?
how we doing?
So it's a reimbursement program, right? So it's a 75-25% split between FEMA and between the property owners, but it's up to the town to administer the project. So we are responsible for awarding it to a contractor. So we would have to, in essence, upfront those costs.
Right.
Give a purchase order once it gets awarded to a contractor to then perform the work. Then after the work is complete, then that's when we seek reimbursement from FEMA and from the federal government and the state. They're kind of work in conjunction. And then work with those property owners to then also obtain that 25% that they're supposed to kick in.
So this is expected to be reimbursed.
True.
So there should not be an actual net cost here, but it makes it appear as if it's $575,000 we have to bond.
Well, we're gonna need those funds up front, however.
Can
So,
we go to
and-
bond?
And when with FEMA, when you go for reimbursement, so this project
out
is
soon
most
enough.
likely gonna take, from the time, number one, just to give everybody an update, right, in case anybody is unaware, I know Krista reached out to the New York State Department of Emergency Services.
Yeah.
They said that they're completing their review and they expect that to take place within the next couple of weeks. But then upon their completion, it then has to get kicked up to FEMA.
Right.
And that FEMA review can take an additional couple months until we hear back.
Right.
Now, on our end, obviously, we can't really take any action until we know for certain, if we're awarded this grant or not. So once we hear back from FEMA, then at that point, on our end, we're gonna have to put out an RFP, because we're gonna need to bring in a design professional to come in.
Right.
Number one, to work with the property owners to, come up with formal designs for each one of these properties on how they're gonna be elevated, finalize those drawings, work through the construction management, assist with the grant funding also, because there's a lot of paperwork that's associated with that, and payrolls, finalize the construction documents, put everything out to bid, and then get a contractor ultimately to come in and then perform the work. So that whole process of obtaining an RFP, getting a design professional, that's gonna take anywhere from, it could be 6, 7 months to at least, because it's gonna be a lot of field work, right? Going out, meeting with the property owners, meeting with contractors, and then once they finalize that, then the bid process is gonna take another 2, 3 months, and then construction then formally starts. When we originally put in the application for the grant, we met with some contractors who had done prior projects, and they said that this work can take anywhere from 6 months to maybe even more, depending upon some of the complications that might come up. So realistically, you're not talking about construction really starting for this project until 2024. But I think on our end, the town's end,
I know at
we
least
kinda
one
have to
homeowner
secure
is
the funding.
gasping right now.
Right, because I
Yeah,
know,
because
yeah,
FEMA's
because
funding.
because remember the homeowner, Miss Rodriguez, has been out of her home since this started. And now her FEMA assistance runs out in March. So, and she can't get in, they won't extend the FEMA
Right, they won't extend anything past the.
past that time period. So that's
Even
why,
though
I
they
mean.
take more than 18 months.
Yeah, so we just need to give her and give the other, Ms. Salto, another update, because, I mean,
So,
My question is really in managing the money, is how do we deal with money that's going to be reimbursed to us, and it's not really a cost to the town?
So what we do is we set up the capital project, we put in a budget
Right.
for what we're going to be spending.
Right.
And when we receive those monies are
Get
kind of
credited.
netted against that project line.
Right.
So we need to lay it out, we need to lay out the expense, and then when we get reimbursed, the revenue will offset the
But are we
expense.
going to bond for that money? Because that increases our bond exposure for money that we're expect to get back in a relatively
Most
short period
likely.
of time.
and-
Or
and-
is that something that can come out of the 3 mil?
Right.
And that way, then we replenish it, and then we have that money again to use in '24.
is the 3 mil still there? Because we keep using that 3 mil.
No, we
3
just,
mil.
we just
Just-
talked
yeah.
about it for the 300, whatever.
No, I'm
Right,
just,
right.
I'm just
Right.
making a point. We keep relying on this $3 million, so I just need to make sure after a
We
while, there's
haven't
not
even
gonna be any
gotten
more
to
$3 million so are we saying that, I'm sorry, Brian, excuse me, are we saying that we're gonna bond for this, or we're gonna use this against the 3 mil, or we're not sure yet?
We're not sure yet.
Okay.
The complex part is that we're talking about this project beginning in this calendar year, 2023, but you don't get reimbursement until the completion of the project, which likely isn't gonna be till 2024. So that's where, if we're talking about putting it in the capital budget, then I imagine it's, you have to bond for something to obtain the monies first, and then you don't get reimbursement until the following year.
Or we have it from this $3 million, and then we're not bonding it and we're not paying interest. And then we're getting the money reimbursed to us that can be used in a future project in
Right.
24.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I think it is important, though, to note, I mean, the purpose of the grant is for future mitigation. So I think it is important that we set up a meeting with FEMA and find out, because it is such going to be a long timeline, to meet with them and with the state to find out what other options are available for those two homeowners. Maybe there's something that, you know, improvements that can be done right away to make their homes habitable, and then this way they can live and move back in
At least for
until
a portion
we're
of the
getting
time.
confirmation.
It's going to take a while.
So when
Yeah.
can we have those meetings? Until when, not until the grant has been awarded or the
No,
grant
no,
has been
I think
approved?
as far
Could
as
we start
making the
doing
home
that?
habitable now, 'cause
Yeah.
I think, initially, I think that 18 months for
Yeah.
FEMA, the intent is for a homeowner to make the home habitable so you can move in.
Right,
This project, you know, we were hopeful that we were going to get grant funding before the 18 months, and then we could have all rolled it into one project.
right.
But unfortunately, because of how long it's taking for the FEMA review, it just didn't seem to work out that way. So I think at this point, it's a matter of dealing with FEMA. Maybe there's reimbursements that they can give directly to the homeowner, and it's worked out amongst themselves, so that they can do the improvements necessary to move back into their homes, while we are still waiting to hear back from FEMA and go through our RFP process and go through the bidding process for construction.
Okay, so when does that conversation start? I'm just concerned
should have it
because,
soon.
because
I
that
think-
March date
yeah,
is,
so-
March is in 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
So tomorrow, we'll reach out to Krista, and Krista has the contact with New York State and with
Okay.
FEMA, and we'll see what their availability is.
And maybe
Okay.
we can make some recommendations as to other funding sources, other grants, whatever, for the two homeowners who
Yeah.
are so impacted, to help them
Help them along, right.
make the
We need to do that, we need to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, tomorrow. Can, okay, thank you.
Okay, next is Fairview Park Drive Bridge repair. This bridge has been red flagged by New York State and needs repairs, so we're under a mandate to do that. An engineer is on board now and coming up with repairs. All right, so we move on to page 8. First is lowest bonds playground. This is phase 1, $250,000. We've had some meetings with the center and the county, and I think there's a real plan in place, and I think all the thanks goes to Wyndham Gordon, who's really pushes like hell to get those things done, so that's what that cost is for. The second part is the front parking lot for the reconstruction of it.
Well, what's phase 2?
Yeah.
Because you know how this works. There's a phase 2, there's a phase 3, this is $250,000. That's not insignificant.
So it's 2 phases. Phase 1 is for the 5 to 12-year-old playground and the toddler playground structures.
Right.
And then the phase 2 is for the pre-K structure. It's, this project's under a CDBG grant funding, so it's, CDBG is for $250,000, and then the town's responsible for anything over that. There's a total construction cost of the $540,000. So that's why the town's match would then be the $290,000 for that project. And then the thought.
Isn't there another $40,000 that the town has to pick up? Because if it's $240,000 and CBGG is giving us the $250, the difference is not $250.
Right, so it's, the town's match would be $290,000.
Right. So now we're up to $250,000. And this is phase 1.
This is phase 1, correct. With the
And do we know
thought
what
being
phase 2 is going to cost?
I don't, I have that information, I don't know off the top of my head.
I think they've got the design pretty well done. There is surveying work that's taking place now. The first surveyor we had was unresponsive after many, many months, so we've gone to the second responsible bidder. So I think as we get that, and then you dig through the details.
And have we explored grant money? Because, because of the population being served, you would think that there would be grant money to help us with what seems like it's going to turn out to be about $500,000 in matching funds.
Yeah.
So the CDBG funds are just
For phase one.
covering that first playground. So the second playground doesn't get funding unless we apply for it. So we need to apply for some other source of funding for the second playground?
Well, I think the thought was, and we can confirm with Winsome, but the thought was to break into 2 phases, so you can work under CDBG funding for this first phase, and then for phase 2, which would be the next year, you could then also seek additional CDBG
Right,
grant
which is
funding.
that's-
So
yeah,
you could be eligible
exactly.
for an additional $250,000 next year for that second part of the project.
Right,
The-
that's what I was saying, not so artfully, thank you.
So this is the aftermath of the research as to who owns the playground, right? So we agree that, the playground was, the town had a hand in the playground. So now we agree to have it taken down, so the funding would be available, and now we need to replace it, and it's $500,000
To start.
for that playground. Must be some playground.
The
Stuff's
issue,
expensive.
so our understanding, we met out there with the county. So the county is very much involved in this also. They're the ones that have
The CBD.
been working, yet.
Right.
And so it's our understanding that the current playground that's out there is, it can't even be used. With the playground equipment, and I'm not a professional in playground equipment, but it's outdated, and the children can't even play on it because what was, I guess, considered safe when it was initially put in is no longer considered safe for children to play.
It's not an issue. It's not an issue.
It's also rusted and broken pieces, and
Well,
the
safety
ground is
surface
not.
was- yes, that was damaged
The surface of the
during item,
ground
yep.
is, so that it's got, they've not only are replacing the equipment, they've got to
It's a complete redo.
demolish the ground, take it down, repave.
But when we were dealing with this whole issue, this is going to be town equipment that's going into this enclosed area that's operated by the group that's running the daycare center. We have no control of how they oversee and manage the children when they're using playground equipment. Are we getting indemnified by this group so that they will have the proper oversight of the children?
We need to have that agreement in writing before this construction is completed. As of right now, I don't see any indemnification. So there was a preliminary discussion, and I'll reach back out to their attorney, and we'll draft something up for your review, and then we can move forward to ensure.
The town is not the one that's running the daycare center.
That's right.
And we're putting equipment in, and there shouldn't be a free ride should they be negligent. I'm not saying there will be, but I think we need to protect the town and the taxpayers because we don't have any control over how this equipment is being used once we put it in.
But there is the protection in that their children are using it, and they're responsible for the children, so they've got to make sure it's properly cared for, too. But you're right, I'm not contradicting you.
Okay.
Okay, so those are the two CDBG, and by the way, the pavilion, I believe, is underway. I think there's a meeting out there today or tomorrow. So
The
that's
roof?
Yeah, so that's in the works. And thank you, Roberta, for coming up with that funding. Next is stormwater detention pond maintenance and repairs.
I'm sorry, in the parking lot?
Well, the parking lot is the front area.
Thank you.
So
You're so good.
Thank you. It's a complete.
Now I understand.
It's ADA compliance with the sidewalks. It's a redesign of the parking lot. Parking lot doesn't, I mean, when you guys were out there giving out the tests, and you saw the seniors having to get walked in from, there's no ramps, there's nowhere to drop, it's just, it doesn't function correctly. So Suzette Lopine with the county Planning is working on a
And I think
redo.
a big part of that is also the drainage improvements.
Yes.
One thing that we learned, especially during Hurricane Ida, was the existing parking lot is at the same elevation as the doors entering into the TDYCC Community Center. So whenever that water, heavy rain goes down the driveway,
Right in.
it runs directly into the front, basically the front doors. And so that would be a big part of this project, so God forbid if we get another event like that, hopefully there'll be some mitigation in place, so it's not as.
Well, you're saying hopefully, you gotta check the design to make sure that doesn't happen.
Right, but I mean, just when I say hopefully another event like Hurricane Ida,
Oh.
you can never truly design for something like that, but you can at least try
Right.
and mitigate from loss.
Best extent.
All right. Okay, the next one?
Next one is stormwater design and pond maintenance and repairs. This has been an ongoing issue. There's two Toll Brother developments where the town was gifted basins for our maintenance. We do have to work on, there's a taxing district that was supposed to be put in place. I'm not sure where that ended up, but that really has to get
It was
looked
on
at.
Toll Brothers.
Toll Brothers, two developments.
They gifted us detention ponds?
When they did the development
And
and
we
went through the
accepted
planning
it.
process, evidently back then, we took these parcels of property with the basins on them that we now have to maintain.
Why would we do that?
I don't know.
I think it's the approach. I've seen it set up two separate ways. There's some subdivisions in town where there's an HOA that's established, and the HOA is responsible for taking
Right.
care of the storm drainage systems. What I've seen, at least, in my experience, is the HOAs aren't always aware of their maintenance obligation to maintain some of these things. So I think at the time, and I can't speak for these two subdivisions because I wasn't here when they were built, but I think the thought changed at the time, or the approach changed to, instead of putting it on an HOA to maintain these areas, the town can establish a taxing district, a drainage district for these homes, and then we would take on the maintenance responsibility for, and we're not saying the maintenance responsibility for everything, we're just saying for the, in this case, it's the basins, the stormwater basin, detention basins that they have on those sites. Because it is a large responsibility. It's going in there, doing annual inspections, cleaning out any vegetation, any trees, making major capital improvements that come up. And with these two subdivisions, that's the way it was set up where.
So could we see if that's a condition of approval and, for the taxing district? Because otherwise now we have to ask the residents, do you approve of us taxing you? And you know that's not going to
That's
come
not
up with a
gonna-
positive result.
No, Garrett, I think
Right.
that was the case, I believe. There's 4 basins, and
Right.
2 of them are very large. Actually, 3 of them are large,
Right.
one's smaller. So yes, that's something I believe was part of that.
Because otherwise we're asking the taxpayers to take care of a detention basin for a development that went in.
Yep.
Okay, so who's going to follow up on that?
I'll follow up with Joe and Garrett. We'll
You see
Zoom
how
meeting.
that was done? You see?
Teamwork.
It wasn't, I'll see whether or not I can find, you
teamwork.
know, Bob and, you know.
All right.
And then we have the Consolidated Water Department, or District. This is a water main replacement. This is in the High Point Road area. This is an area that's got to get looked at. It needs a new water main. We have been working, Brian, myself, Andy Donnelly, Ref Tellis, with the Water Advisory Board.
So the $4 million is solely for that one area?
Yeah. And it's an involved project. But we are looking at a plan to be put in place for the water district. It's more of a master plan on capital. And I think the Water Advisory Board really liked the idea. It comes back, would put some best practices in place. For instance, with the amount of miles we have of water main, you come up with a percentage each year that you go to capital and improve, and maintain, or replace. But I think we're working towards a solution with the advisory board. They were receptive to that, but this project is on for next year. And we also, the contact tank has been ongoing. I think now it's been pushed back. It was supposed to be March, now they're saying maybe May. So that is an ongoing, very extensive project.
And there's no additional capital needed for that?
No.
There's nothing here?
No. We did pull off, Paul wanted a Cadillac Escalade. We did take
You
that
won that
off.
one.
You said you wanted a gas guzzler. You said you wanted something with some power.
Yeah, that's what he needs, is a car that goes really fast.
No, that would not be
So he can go 30 miles an hour.
In the 55 mile an hour.
Right, on the highway.
I just was going to ask, could you maybe, I really want to do, more detailed work plans, because I feel, one of the problems we've had, in the past was, budgets, the capital budgets just weren't spent. And I'm wondering if you could give us a little bit more detailed estimate, who's going to be the project coordinator, and then the timeline, assuming that the budget gets approved in April.
And I got to say, and again, Roberta's been extremely helpful, and her department. We have really tried to draw down those lines, specific, the sewer line now. Right now, we're doing, and the board approved a very extensive relining project. We've done a lot of that. There's a lot more to come. So you're going to start to see those lines draw down. And these are not, feel-good projects. These are things.
Well, that's the problem, they're all important, but at the same time, an expensive, nobody wants to see a large tax hike.
We're not looking to break the budget, but there are certain things, especially like
No, I
the roads and the
understand.
curbs. I mean, you get the emails. I know everybody sees that, you drive down the road, I mean, just drive down Park
I'm
Avenue.
not.
I understand, but it gets to a point, and I'm not trying to belittle the subject, where you gotta put things in place so that the infrastructure doesn't fail. Water, sewer, your drainage systems, your roadways, that stuff you can't put
Nickel
off.
and dime.
It's gotta get done.
Well,
right?
again, Roberta's going to give us an estimate of what the impact is going to be to taxpayers, and then we'll have a discussion with the board, what you have to handle it. I mean, maybe we want to bite the bullet and just get it all done. I mean, that's one option.
I mean, and having the discussions with Rich and Brian, it needs to get done. It's
Yeah.
not about, nickel and diamond, just as Rich just spoke about. I mean, we've been pushing this stuff over and over again. Francis mentioned something from 2006, 2006, that we keep pushing. We're at a point now, we're in 2023. We can't keep going on. It's gonna cost us more if we keep kicking the road down again. So, and I understand the concern. I don't want any of our residents' taxes to be raised, but if this is one, gonna make sure and put things in place, and the infrastructure is, we make it better, then these are the things that we may have to do. And I'm hoping that it does not cost a lot. And
Pay now or
but that's
pay
reality.
later.
Huh?
Pay now
Pay
or
now.
pay
They'll pay,
later.
yeah, and it's just the reality.
Looked at replacing those utility poles in 2006, it would have been less expensive than that.
Right.
No, I'm
And
not-
you know
I'm
what,
not
it's
being
also-
critical, I'm
No,
just
you're
saying-
No, I know,
Right.
no, and again, I'm not saying that you're being critical, I just think that we all understand the concern, and we don't want to give a tax hike, but we just have to just really understand the reality of all of this.
No, I understand.
In our own homes, if we have to replace a roof, we're not going to let it go. We have to take
And we
care of it.
pride ourselves
Greenberg
on
is our
giving
home.
Greenberg, right,
Greenberg is our
absolutely.
home, and if it costs us a little bit more as taxpayers to do the work, just like we would do on our home in a given year, because something had to be done, that's something that we're going to have to confront. But if you're talking about deferring projects so that you spread the budget from 23 to 23-24 with a hard stop at 24, then you have to think forward about what kind of expenses and things are going to come up for 2024, because then that, you pay now, pay later.
No, I understand.
Yeah, and you never know, the town controller could come back and say, you could spend more, right? So,
I mean,
Don't hold your breath.
listen, with things like paving, you could really get a handle on it. You're going to have that same type of number each year.
Right.
Drainage, God knows what they're going to come back with these studies. You could have a massive project. Troublesome Brook, if you've got to go and replace that main, and hopefully there's maybe monies out there to help, maybe Emmerich and Mary Jane Shimskis and others could help us with that. But, you might be looking at a $10 million project on some of those things, and then.
Right,
you know.
right, exactly. So, knowing that we have areas that will probably require great expenditure going forward,
No, I understand.
It's an aging infrastructure. We were out on Andover this afternoon with some residents, lovely people out there. Very nice group. Everybody really got along nicely in the neighborhood. And they got some real drainage issues. And you start to look at, there's a corrugated metal pipe running through their yards. And now it looks like it might have failed in one place. We got to do some homework, but you have an aging infrastructure. And when you look at what's down the road with us with like water and sewer, you got a lead and copper rule coming out with
Right,
water.
right.
That's going to be a massive project. There's all these things that are going to come this way, and, it's not something that you could, it's not like a car, you could wait another year or two maybe, and.
I think we have made for a couple, we've been
Yeah.
kicking it down the road,
Yeah,
like I
you've
just
been
said. I
kicking the
mean,
can down the
we
road.
can't keep doing this over and over, right?
At
We
this
have
point,
to-
the car is being held together.
With tape, with duct tape, it looks
Duct
like,
tape,
Fred Flintstone at this point, so, we really have to,
Don't underestimate duct tape.
No, but it's been being held together with duct tape for the past 2 years.
We really appreciate your time and
Great.
you taking the time.
Let-
to listen.
Appreciate
Let's
your
just take our
pictures.
budget.
Yeah, that's
I don't think Garrett's.
a tent,
no,
a
they
leak
just
in
said,
the
I'm checking on it right now.
TDYCC
Yeah.
gym.
Yeah.
And there's a contraption that takes the water and.
It's a very
sends it to-
clever.
Oh, yeah.
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 So they can still be used. But That's just one example.
It works.
That's now.
Yeah, that's right now.
Wow, wow.
Listen, I know
Okay.
we talk about it a lot, but you really got some really great employees that work for this town. They really care. They give it 110% every day, and they're what keeps us running.
Team Greenberg.
There you
That's right,
go.
that's important. And that's
Thank
why
you
we're
very
going to
much for your
continue to
time.
hire those employees.